My girlfriend said she lost her grandmother's necklace at work. I found it on her ex's Instagram. He was giving it to someone else as an anniversary gift. I showed up to their anniversary dinner with the receipt and a police officer. Turns out, theft isn't anniversary material. I, 29M, thought I knew my girlfriend after 2 years together. I was wrong about everything. It started 3 weeks ago when she came home from work crying. She told me she'd lost her grandmother's necklace somewhere at the office. The way she described it, this wasn't just any piece of jewelry. It was a vintage emerald pendant that had been passed down through 3 generations, worth about $8,000 according to the insurance papers she'd shown me months earlier. I watched her tear apart our apartment looking for it, checking every drawer, every coat pocket, even the washing machine. She called her work multiple times, spoke to security, had them check the parking lot. Nothing. She was devastated, and I felt terrible watching her blame herself for losing something so precious. Being the supportive boyfriend I thought I was, I offered to help replace it. I spent hours online trying to find something similar, even contacted a few vintage jewelry dealers. She appreciated the gesture, but said nothing could replace her grandmother's necklace. The sentimental value was irreplaceable. That should have been the end of it. But I'm the type of person who doesn't give up easily. Last Tuesday, I was scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break when I saw something that made my blood freeze. Her ex-boyfriend had posted a story. They'd dated for 3 years before we got together, and while I wasn't thrilled about their occasional social media interactions, I'd learned to live with it. But this post was different. He was at some fancy restaurant, and in the photo, he was holding up a small velvet box across from a woman whose face I couldn't see clearly. The caption read, "2 years together deserves something special. Found the perfect vintage piece for my anniversary gift." I almost scrolled past it. Almost. But something about that box looked familiar. I screenshot the story and zoomed in. My hands started shaking when I realized what I was looking at. It was her grandmother's necklace. The exact same emerald pendant, the same intricate gold setting. Even the same small chip on the left side that she'd pointed out to me before. There was no mistaking it. I sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to process what I was seeing. How did he have it? She'd said she lost it at work. Had she somehow found it and given it to him? Was this some kind of sick joke? I drove home early that day, my mind racing with possibilities. When she got home from work, I watched her carefully. She seemed normal, maybe a little tired, but nothing unusual. She even mentioned the necklace again, saying she'd called a few more places to see if anyone had turned it in. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the screenshot, trying to make sense of it. By morning, I made a decision. I needed more information. I created a fake Instagram account and started following her ex. It took me 2 days to find what I was looking for. He'd posted more photos from what was clearly an anniversary dinner. The woman he was with was someone I'd never seen before, definitely not my girlfriend. But in one of the photos, she was wearing the necklace. The comments on his posts told me everything I needed to know. People were congratulating him on finding such a beautiful vintage piece, asking where he'd gotten it. He responded to one comment saying he'd gotten it from someone special who no longer needed it. Someone special who no longer needed it. I felt sick. The pieces were falling into place, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. I spent the next few days doing something I never thought I'd do. I started investigating my own girlfriend. I checked her phone when she was in the shower, looked through her emails, even followed her during her lunch breaks. I felt like a stalker, but I needed to know the truth. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. She'd been meeting with her ex regularly for the past month. Not just casual coffee dates, but long lunches, evening walks, even a weekend trip she told me was a work conference. The lies were everywhere once I started looking for them. But the necklace was the smoking gun. I found text messages between them from 2 weeks ago. She'd asked him to meet her, said she had something for him. He'd responded asking what it was, and she'd simply said it was something to help him with his anniversary plans. She'd given him her grandmother's necklace. Voluntarily. To help him impress another woman. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not only had she lied about losing it, but she'd given away something supposedly precious to help her ex-boyfriend's relationship with someone else. The same necklace she'd cried over. The same one she'd let me spend hours trying to replace. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. I remembered she'd shown me the insurance papers for the necklace when we'd first started dating. She'd been proud of it. Had even joked about how she'd need to add me to the policy someday. Those papers were still in her jewelry box, along with the original receipt from when her grandmother had bought it in 1987. I photographed everything. The insurance documents, the receipt, even a photo she'd taken of herself wearing it last Christmas. Then I screenshot every social media post from her ex, every text message I could find, every piece of evidence that told the real story. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd take this lie. For a week, I played the supportive boyfriend. I listened to her talk about how guilty she felt about losing the necklace. I watched her fake sadness when she mentioned it. I even comforted her when she had what appeared to be a breakdown about disappointing her grandmother's memory. It was all an act. Every tear, every moment of guilt, every time she'd let me hold her while she cried about it. She was a better actress than I'd ever given her credit for. The breaking point came when I overheard a phone call she thought I couldn't hear. She was in the bathroom with the water running, but our apartment has thin walls. She was talking to someone, laughing about how well her plan had worked. She mentioned something about me being too trusting, too eager to help. She called me naive. That's when I decided she needed to learn that actions have consequences. I did some research and found out when her ex was planning his anniversary dinner. It wasn't hard to figure out. He'd posted about making reservations at an upscale restaurant downtown, the same place where he'd proposed to his girlfriend according to his earlier posts. I called the restaurant and confirmed they had a reservation under his name for Saturday night. Then I made a few more calls. The first was to the police. I explained the situation to a detective, showed him all my evidence. The necklace was worth over $8,000, and I had proof of ownership and proof that it had been given away without the owner's consent. Technically, it was theft, even if she was the one who'd originally inherited it. The insurance policy listed it as stolen property, which she'd filed a claim for just days after giving it to her ex. The detective was interested. Insurance fraud combined with theft made for a compelling case. My second call was to the insurance company. I explained that I'd found the supposedly stolen necklace and provided them with all the evidence I'd gathered. They were very interested in recovering their $8,000 payout. Saturday night arrived. I dressed carefully, putting on my best suit. I wanted to look respectable for what was about to happen. I arrived at the restaurant 30 minutes before their reservation time and spoke with the manager. I explained the situation, showed him my evidence, and asked if I could handle this quietly. He was surprisingly understanding, probably because he didn't want a scene in his establishment. The detective I'd been working with arrived shortly after. He was in plain clothes, which I appreciated. This didn't need to be more dramatic than necessary. We waited. They arrived right on time. Her ex looked nervous, which made sense given that he was about to propose. His girlfriend looked beautiful, and I almost felt bad for what was about to happen to her evening. Almost. I watched them get seated, watched him order wine, watched him fidget with what I assumed was an engagement ring box. The necklace was clearly visible around his girlfriend's neck, catching the light every time she moved. I gave them 15 minutes to settle in, then approached their table. Her ex recognized me immediately. The color drained from his face when he saw me walking toward them with the detective behind me. I introduced myself to his girlfriend, explained who I was and why I was there. I told her the necklace she was wearing had been reported stolen, and that I had proof it belonged to someone else. I showed her the insurance papers, the original receipt, and the photos of my girlfriend wearing it. She looked confused, then hurt, then angry. She turned to her boyfriend and asked him where he'd really gotten the necklace. He tried to explain, but his story fell apart quickly under questioning. The detective stepped in at that point. He explained the legal situation, how receiving stolen property was a crime even if you didn't know it was stolen. He asked to see the necklace, and she handed it over without argument. Her ex tried to claim he'd bought it legitimately, but I had the text messages. I showed them to everyone at the table, including the one where my girlfriend had explicitly said she was giving him something to help with his anniversary plans. The detective asked if he wanted to press charges against my girlfriend for theft and insurance fraud. I told him I'd think about it. But first, I had one more stop to make. I drove home with the necklace in my pocket and the detective following behind me. My girlfriend was waiting for me, dressed up for what she thought was going to be a romantic dinner out. She asked me why I was so late, why I was wearing a suit, why there was a police car in our parking lot. I told her I'd found her grandmother's necklace. The look on her face was priceless. Confusion, then panic, then a desperate attempt to maintain her lie. She asked me where I'd found it, tried to act relieved and grateful. I told her the whole story. How I'd seen it on her ex's Instagram, how I'd followed the trail of lies, how I'd spent the evening watching him try to propose with stolen jewelry. She tried to deny it at first, then tried to minimize it. She said it wasn't really stealing since it was hers to give away. She said she'd been planning to tell me eventually. She said she'd only done it because she felt sorry for her ex, because his girlfriend deserved something nice. The detective explained that insurance fraud was a felony. Filing a false claim for $8,000 could result in serious jail time. He asked her if she wanted to confess, or if she preferred to do this the hard way. She broke down then. Not the fake tears she'd been using for weeks, but real ones. She admitted everything. How she'd been seeing her ex behind my back. How she'd given him the necklace to help him propose to someone else. How she'd filed the insurance claim to get money to replace it before I found out. She begged me not to press charges. She promised she'd pay back the insurance money, promised she'd never see her ex again, promised she'd do anything to make it right. I looked at her, this person I'd thought I loved, this person I'd trusted completely, and felt nothing but disgust. I told the detective I wanted to press full charges. Update 1. The legal process moved faster than I expected. My girlfriend was arrested that night and charged with insurance fraud and theft. The insurance company was very motivated to prosecute since they'd already paid out the claim. Her ex was charged with receiving stolen property, though his lawyer managed to get him a plea deal since he cooperated fully with the investigation. His girlfriend broke up with him immediately, which seemed like the least of his problems. I had to testify at the preliminary hearing. Seeing my ex-girlfriend in handcuffs was surreal. She looked smaller somehow, defeated. Her lawyer tried to argue that it was a domestic dispute, not a criminal matter, but the judge wasn't buying it. The insurance fraud charge was the serious one. $8,000 put it in felony territory, and she had no prior record to help her case. Her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She got 2 years probation, community service, and had to pay full restitution to the insurance company plus penalties. She also had to pay my legal fees, which added up to more than the necklace was worth. But the real punishment was everything else she lost. Her job fired her when the charges became public. Her family was mortified. Her friends stopped talking to her. She had to move back in with her parents at 27 years old. I kept the necklace. Legally, it was evidence until the case was closed, but once everything was settled, it was returned to me. I thought about selling it, but something stopped me. Update 2. 6 months later, I got a call that changed everything. It was from a woman who introduced herself as my ex-girlfriend's aunt. She said she'd been trying to reach me for weeks, that she had something important to tell me about the necklace. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She was an older woman, probably in her 60s, with kind eyes and a nervous demeanor. She told me she'd been following the case in the local news, had recognized the necklace from the photos. Then she told me something that made my blood run cold. The necklace had never belonged to my ex-girlfriend's grandmother. She explained that my ex-girlfriend's grandmother had been her sister and that she'd been present when the necklace was supposedly passed down. It had never happened. Her grandmother had been buried with her jewelry, including several valuable pieces, but not that necklace. She'd seen my ex-girlfriend wearing it about 3 years ago and had asked about it. My ex-girlfriend had spun some story about finding it at an estate sale, said she'd bought it because it reminded her of her grandmother. The aunt had thought it was odd, but hadn't pressed the issue. Now, seeing the news coverage and hearing about the insurance fraud, she felt compelled to speak up. She had photos from her grandmother's funeral, showing exactly what jewelry she'd been buried with. She had the will, which made no mention of the necklace. She had receipts from the funeral home detailing every item that had been interred. The necklace I'd been fighting over, the one that had destroyed my relationship and sent my ex-girlfriend to court, had been stolen from someone else entirely. I sat in that coffee shop for an hour, trying to process what I was hearing. My ex-girlfriend hadn't just lied about losing the necklace. She'd lied about owning it in the first place. The aunt gave me all her documentation and urged me to take it to the police. She said her family deserved to know the truth, and that whoever the necklace really belonged to deserved to get it back. I drove straight to the police station. Update 3. The detective who'd worked my case was fascinated by this new development. He reopened the investigation, this time focusing on where my ex-girlfriend had really gotten the necklace. It took 2 weeks to trace it back to its real owner. The necklace had been stolen from a jewelry store 3 years earlier. Not a smash-and-grab robbery, but an inside job. Someone with access to the store's inventory had taken several pieces over time, including the emerald pendant. My ex-girlfriend had worked at that jewelry store. She'd been fired for attendance issues, but now the timeline made perfect sense. She'd stolen the necklace during her last few weeks there, probably knowing she was about to be let go anyway. The jewelry store owner was contacted, and he confirmed that the necklace matched one of the pieces that had gone missing. He'd filed insurance claims at the time, but the thefts had been spread out over months, making them hard to detect until after she'd left. My ex-girlfriend was arrested again, this time for the original theft. The new charges were more serious than the insurance fraud. She was looking at real prison time. But the story gets even stranger. When the police searched her parents' house, they found 4 other pieces of jewelry that matched items reported stolen from the same store. She'd been running a long-term theft operation, taking pieces slowly to avoid detection. Her parents claimed they had no idea the jewelry was stolen. They thought she'd been buying it with her employee discount. The total value of the stolen jewelry was over $30,000. She was offered another plea deal, but this time the terms were much harsher. 3 years in prison, full restitution to multiple victims, and a permanent felony record. She took the deal. I testified at her sentencing hearing. The judge asked me if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, and I almost declined. But then I thought about all the lies, all the manipulation, all the nights I'd held her while she cried fake tears about losing her grandmother's necklace. I told the judge about the betrayal, about how she'd used my trust and love to cover up her crimes. I talked about how she'd let me spend hours trying to replace something that had never been hers to begin with. I explained how she destroyed not just our relationship, but my ability to trust anyone completely. The judge listened carefully, then sentenced her to the full 3 years. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. I expected to see anger or resentment, but instead, she just looked tired, defeated. I walked out of that courthouse feeling something I hadn't expected: relief. The necklace was returned to the jewelry store owner, who was grateful to finally close that chapter of his business. He offered to sell it to me at cost, said I'd earned the right to own it after everything I'd been through. I declined. I never wanted to see that necklace again. 3 months later, I got a letter from my ex-girlfriend in prison. She apologized for everything, said she'd been living a lie for so long that she'd forgotten what the truth looked like. She said she'd used me, used everyone, and that she finally understood the damage she'd caused. She asked if I could ever forgive her. I never wrote back. Some people aren't worth forgiving. Some betrayals are too deep, too calculated, too cruel to ever move past. She'd built our entire relationship on lies, had let me fall in love with someone who didn't exist. The woman I'd thought I loved had never been real. She'd been a character, a performance, a carefully constructed facade designed to hide a thief and a liar. I kept the letter, though, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that people aren't always who they seem to be. That trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. That sometimes the person sleeping next to you is a stranger wearing a familiar face. I'm dating someone new now. She's nothing like my ex-girlfriend, which is exactly what I need. She's honest to a fault, sometimes brutally so. She tells me when she's had a bad day instead of pretending everything is fine. She admits when she's wrong instead of doubling down on lies. Most importantly, she's never owned any jewelry that belonged to someone else. I learned something important from this whole experience. Revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure the truth comes to light, no matter how ugly it might be. My ex-girlfriend thought she was smart enough to manipulate everyone around her. She thought she could lie her way through life, taking what she wanted and covering her tracks with fake tears and sob stories. She was wrong. Sometimes the truth has a way of surfacing, even when people do everything they can to bury it. Sometimes the lies people tell catch up with them in ways they never expected. And sometimes, the person you trust most is the one who deserves it least. I don't regret any of it. Not following her, not gathering evidence, not showing up at that restaurant with a police officer. She made her choices, and I made mine. The only thing I regret is not seeing through her lies sooner. But I suppose that's what made me a good mark in the first place. I trusted her completely, loved her unconditionally, and believed every word she said. That won't happen again. These days, when someone tells me they've lost something valuable, I listen carefully. When someone cries about a family heirloom, I pay attention to the details. When someone's story doesn't quite add up, I ask questions. I've learned that the most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in just enough truth to seem believable. The most effective liars are the ones who can cry on command, who can make you feel guilty for doubting them, who can turn their victims into accomplices. My ex-girlfriend was all of those things. She was a master manipulator who'd turned lying into an art form. But even the best liars eventually get caught. Even the most elaborate schemes eventually fall apart. Even the most convincing performances eventually end. And when they do, the truth is always uglier than anyone imagined.